We've got Michelle Mannering here, and the title of her talk is GitHub Pilot, Using AI to Help You Learn, Code and Build. So a bit about Michelle. Michelle is a highly motivated, curious and compassionate leader with a keen interest in driving entrepreneurial culture and pioneering Melbourne's esports industry. She has founded several tech companies and, as a result, sits at the forefront of this city's science, tech, esports and startup scenes. When not working at GitHub, Michelle keeps herself busy as a streamer, a journalist, a Quidditch player, and a conference attendee, and is always looking to work on something exciting. Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you, everyone. So yeah, my talk's titled GitHub Copilot. Lots of you know or have heard about Copilot, so I know you're all here to actually hear about Copilot and not actually to listen to me talk. But yeah, as I said, my name is Michelle, or Mish. Feel free to call me Mish. There's on my social media. Feel free to follow me. I know the speaker bingo is still going, so if you take some photos of me, please tweet them. I do have a couple of pair of GitHub socks to give away as well to some of my favorite tweets, so tweet them and I'll reply to you if you win. So I'm a developer advocate at GitHub. I've come over from Melbourne, and yeah, really exciting to be here and to talk to you all about Copilot. So today's talk, we're going to be covering a couple of little things before we actually go into the Copilot side of stuff. So we'll talk a little bit about the idea of AI, artificial intelligence, what we're doing in the space. Obviously, Copilot is an AI, but we're going to get to that in a bit. Talk a little bit about the applications of AI and how it's relevant today. Then we're obviously going to talk about Copilot and do a little bit of a demo. And we're going to finish off talking about this idea and this concept of ownership. So first up, what is AI? Now, a lot of people here have heard about AI. It's a relatively, big part of computing, and it's becoming bigger and bigger, and it's becoming smarter and smarter, as the name suggests. Now, if you Google images of AI, you'll probably see this kind of stuff, this, digital interface, like the whole Iron Man Jarvis type stuff is what we kind of see if we start Googling. But what does artificial intelligence mean? What is the definition of artificial intelligence? Now, IBM has defined it as this, which is artificial intelligence leverages computers and machines to mimic the problem-solving capabilities and decision-making of people. So this definition has been refined over the years. Originally, AI came out of like the Turing project, and then it's kind of moved into more about, okay, well, now it's machine learning. We're all about training models. But now we're getting into this more stage of artificial intelligence. Back in the day when I first started doing startups, one of my first startups was actually an AI company. You see a lot of AI startups and they go, oh yeah, we're doing artificial intelligence. You're like, sweet, what are you doing? They're like, this, and this. You're like, yeah, that's not AI, that's actually machine learning. So machine learning itself is training the model and teaching the things. AI is now into that more decision-making process. What have I learnt? And what can I then use to solve this problem? So that's where the difference is in AI and machine learning. Now, I think movies are a really, really good way to think about the concepts of these kind of like future tech. Now, when we used to talk about, what's future technology going to look like? Oh, look at movies like Back to the Future and Minority Report. I wonder when that's going to come in. And literally the other day, I was having a conversation with my housemate, and he's like, with all this stuff you're doing, we're really not that far away from Jarvis, are we? I'm like, we're actually already here. This whole idea of Jarvis, this machine, not the physical part, not the Ultron side of it, but the original Iron Man side of it, the 19 whatever movie it was now, back in the 90s. This whole idea of training this system with lots of data points, and it can now tell us what to do. It can now give us information from all this understanding and all this stuff that we've trained it on. For example, everyone's seen this, Hey Siri. Now, when Hey Siri and Google and Alexa, when they started, they were kind of like glorified search engines. Hey Siri, how long is the Great Wall of China? Who's old enough to remember that NBN ad or the internet ad? Hey Dad, why did they build a Great Wall of China? Oh yeah, to keep the rabbits out. And the whole thing was like, give your kids the right answer. So Siri, when it started, was this glorified search engine. Now it's a bit more. Hey, people always say, oh, your phone's listening into you. Well, yeah, it is, because it's trying to understand and learn. So now it doesn't just give you information that you need to know. It says, oh, I've also noticed that you played golf the other day. Do you need some more golf balls? Because you might have lost a few. So another one is Google Nest. Now we see this idea of the connected home, the connected devices. Google Nest now uses artificial intelligence in their cameras to see if there's intruders in your house, which is, I think, kind of cool. So it's built up an image recognition of who you are, and it's now learnt who you are as a person. It can now detect other people in the house and then send you a thing saying, hey, we think someone else is in your house based on the movement patterns of you and this other person that we don't recognize. We think there's someone in your house. So there are some of the applications there. Who drives a car here? Pretty much everyone. Now everyone's like, when's self-driving cars coming out? I'm like, well, AI and machine learning has been in cars for a while. This idea of not just power assist, but now I've got driver assist. Traction controls off, stay in the lanes, get off the road, or stay on the road rather. This idea of driver assist, right? And people are like, oh yes, I can start seeing it in our daily lives. What about technology? I came across this one the other day called, what was it called? I can't remember the name of it. It hasn't put it up here. But there's a machine learning and AI algorithm. It's in my resource at the end. That actually writes articles for you. So you don't even need to be a journalist anymore. And outside my job at GitHub, I'm a journalist. And I'm like, oh, geez, the computers are coming for my job. But yeah, they can write articles. There's a really, really contentious thing that popped up the other day. A lot of people have probably seen it. This idea of artwork. There's a famous US art prize that went out, and it ended up going to a person who used computer-generated imagery to create the artwork. Now, what I think is really cool about the artwork side of things, and we're going to get to it in a little bit, is the more specific you give, more parameters that you give the engine, the better artwork you're going to make. And I made that one on Midjourney just the other day. And so if you type in some fun things, you might get something back that you're like, oh, that's a bit weird. It's not the computer or the system not like giving you something, some people are, oh, it's a little bit dumb, isn't it? I'm like, well, no, you just haven't told it what you want. Now we're starting to see it in programming. We're starting to see this idea of not just glorified search engines coming in to help you, but programs that are coming in to help you code. And if you have a look, again, it's going to be, there's a link at the end with a bunch of resources. There's the top 10 AI pair program or AI systems, plugins that you can use for VS Code. One of them is Ali AI, which helps you understand what you've written. Yeah, because you need to know that as a developer. What kind of code have I written here? I actually was talking to someone the other day over dinner, and they're like, yeah, sometimes you just don't know what you write. And I'm like, that's where an AI pair program would help. Now on that list, they obviously have GitHub Copilot as one of the top AI extensions that you can use in VS Code. So what is GitHub Copilot? GitHub Copilot is your AI pair programmer. This is there to help you build, write, and understand your code better. Like the other extensions in VS Code, it's built right into your editor, and you can use it to help you write code. Now, if we have a look at it here, this is a little quick example of it. It's built on the AI Open Codex. Some of my slides are actually back to front here. But it's built on the AI Codex. I should have used AI and Copilot to write my slide deck. But yeah, it's built on AI Codex. It's trained on billions of lines of code. You can see here it's suggesting this whole function. But unlike some of its predecessors or pre-existing AI features and AI functionality, it's not just autocomplete. It is not just looking at it going, oh, hang on, I think I know what you're going to write, so let me autocomplete that for you. We're having this conversation over dinner the other night, and it was like, oh, isn't that the whole idea of like reducing the amount of keystrokes that you make? And I was like, well, not really, because you can either just learn to type faster or you can use shortcuts. Like the whole idea isn't just reducing the amount of keystrokes. It should be about being better programmers and actually writing better code. So that's what Copilot does. And it doesn't just provide you with snippets of code. It doesn't just say, oh, you want to write this thing, here's a snippet of code. And, I'm going to give you the same snippet of code, I'm going to give you the same snippet of code, give you the same snippet of code. No, it doesn't do that. It actually uses what you've currently got in your file and what it knows about the language that you're writing, and uses that context, when I was saying before about the more parameters that you give it, uses the context of what you're trying to do to actually synthesize code that's specific for you. So if we all go use Copilot right now, we're all going to get very, very different responses when we start using it, which I think is really cool. One of the other ways it differs from some of its pre-existing models is just the sheer scale of Copilot. When we work with machine learning, and we're using machine learning to train artificial intelligent models, one of the things that we need is lots and lots of data points. Have you heard of the phrase, dodgy data in, dodgy data out? So what we've done is we haven't just put dodgy data into it, we haven't used bad data, we've used really good quality data to train the model, but we've also used literally billions and billions of data points, lots and lots of code to train this model. So it is an AI pair programmer that you can sit down and code with. And again, same conversation of having my housemate who isn't actually in technology. He's like, oh, it's kind of like, from the way you're describing it, it's kind of like you sitting there writing code, and it's like having a senior developer working next to you. And I was like, well, yeah, but it's like having 83 million senior developers working next to you. Not that everyone using GitHub is a senior developer, but you're basically using the collective knowledge of the internet to then help you write code, which I think is really cool. I mean, that's one of the coolest things about us being able to sit down and, where we've come now in history, right? We're able to use the collective knowledge of everyone else who came before us. So why can't we use that every single day while we code? And one of the things I really like about Copilot too is it's not really limited to any particular person, right? Damon did a fantastic talk before on code spaces and actions and all this kind of cool stuff. I'm like, yeah, that's so cool. But some of it, when you start getting a bit deeper, I'm like, oh, it's kind of beyond my knowledge. But with Copilot, pretty much every single person can use it, whether you're a developer that's just starting out or you're a senior developer working on Facebook or Instagram or whatever you're doing. And that's what I really like about it. So here's a little snippet from our website. So you can see it works in multiple languages as well. So we have lots of different languages you can use Copilot with. And you can see a little bit in a demo about the different types of ways you can use those languages. And what I really like about it too is it doesn't just provide you with code that it thinks you need. It provides you with really, really meaningful code based on the context that you've got. All right, let's get into a demo. There's a couple of spoilers in there, so I was like, oh, let's not talk about those now. Let's talk about the demo. All right, so in this demo, this is pre-recorded, but it's mine. I did this myself literally 2 days ago. One of the reasons I did it pre-recorded is we don't have a lot of time. We literally have 20 minutes. The second reason is because Copilot learns, it means that when I finish writing the code, it already knows what I'm going to write or what I want. So I'm going to show you in a minute. But basically, if you haven't used GitHub Copilot before, you need to go to the VS Code extension marketplace. You go and grab Copilot, you install it, you log into GitHub, use your credentials to log in, and then you allow it, and then you can start using Copilot. So you can see down the bottom there, that little Copilot icon there. So when we're using it, this is an example that I wrote the other day. I was on Twilio Quest trying to do one of their coding challenges, and I got a little bit stuck, and I was like, ha, 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 I can use Copilot. And I was doing this live on a Twitch stream as well. So what I'm providing up there is basically the problem that it was asking me to solve. And interestingly enough, even though I wrote that out as a comment to start off with, it tried to give me a function. So the problem there is basically reverse the sentence. All the letters need to be non-capitalized unless it's the name of something. The first letter of the word of the reverse sentence needs to be capitalized, and the punctuation needs to go at the end. So obviously when I wrote, we need to reverse a sentence, it just gave me one function that says reverse a sentence. I was like, okay, Copilot needs some more context here. So what I'm writing out, and this is what I did on my stream, I was like, all right, what are the steps that I need to go through to solve this problem? Let's write them out in plain English, each step that I need to do. So I'm going, okay, first let's actually make the first letter of the sentence lowercase. If it's not an I had a bunch of sentences, and I was like, let's not worry about like names of places. Let's just start a little bit basic with an I. And so I was like, okay, Copilot, let's see what you can give me. And I was like, all right, let's change a couple little parameters here just to make it a little bit easier to understand. But by providing Copilot with the context and the way that I want to solve this problem, it's able to help me better than the original snippet of code that it gave me, which was reverse a sentence. I'm like, well, that's great. If I just wanted to reverse a sentence, but I already knew how to do that. So let's go through these ones. So I was like, right, next we want to split the sentence into an array of words because we actually want to reverse this sentence. So it's like, all right, that's there. And I'm like, oh, sweet, that's pretty good too. And I'm sitting there going tab, tab, tab while I'm live streaming this thing, which is pretty cool. And I was like, oh, I don't have to do anything here. Yeah, Copilot really is going to take my job. It provides with all the punctuation marks there, but I was like, oh, no, I want to make sure that the words, yeah, there you go. It's pretty cool, eh? So yeah, I was like, all right, now let's take out the punctuation marks from the sentence. And what I want to do is I want to store them still so I could add them back in later, which is why I'm adding the array there. I was like, right, now we're going to remove them. So, all right, there it is. Let's replace the punctuation marks there with nothing at the end. So I was like, oh, I'm going to call it a sentence because that's going to be easy. And then obviously, the last thing we want to do is we want to split, no, obviously we've done this. Now let's split the sentence, reverse the sentence. Yeah, come on. Gee, I'm typing really slow, aren't I? Let's reverse the sentence, join it back together again, and add the punctuation marks at the end. I was like, sweet, what are you going to give me? Okay, that's pretty good, Copilot. So let's name that there. And I was like, sweet. I basically have most of my stuff there, thanks to Copilot. Changed a couple little parameters. As you can see, I had help from a developer who's a lot more senior than me doing this on stream. But yeah, this was like really cool that Copilot's able to do this. Now I was like, finally, yeah, we need to add the punctuation marks back into the sentence and we need to actually join it back together. So you can see here, it's trying to predict what I'm asked, like what it wants to do, but I'm like providing it with a little bit more context each time. We can see there, bang. It's provided that with me. And I was like, that's really cool. Again, let's double check that with some code that a senior developer gave me. And I was like, oh, that's exactly what he wrote, basically. I think Copilot's coming for your job, mate. No, I'm just kidding. But basically, it's really awesome. It's able to provide with a lot of context. And I'm going to give you a couple of quotes here. These are straight off our website. But yeah, like people are just absolutely loving what Copilot does. So it is pretty awesome, and it's like actually mind-blowing, the technology it does. Now, as I was saying before, one of the reasons why I didn't want to do this live is because when you are writing Copilot, and you can see there, we went through all the stuff, Copilot's learning. It's learning what you want it to do and for you. So I was like, okay, what happens if I had have done this live? Something like this probably would have happened. So open up a brand new file, copy and paste that same bit in there, and Copilot goes, oh yeah, I think I know what you're trying to do. I reckon you're trying to reverse a sentence, and bang. The whole thing, I was like, that's what would have happened if we had done this live. And you wouldn't have got that cool, like that, you know, the suspense of each part, you know, breaking down the problem and understanding how to actually do it. So thanks for that one, Copilot. That was really cool. Now, people really like this. And again, the title of my talk isn't just using Copilot to code. It's using Copilot to actually understand and learn with your code, not just it learn, right? So we've launched this new thing shortly after Copilot called GitHub Copilot Labs. Again, another extension. So you go to the VS Marketplace, install that in there, and then you'll see this little pop-up on the side of your VS Code called Copilot Labs. Now, what I like about Copilot Labs is it actually helps you, again, the same function here, it actually helps you, especially if you're starting and learning, actually helps you explain and understand your code. Now, again, someone was, you know, you're all kind of laughing at me before. You wrote the code though, don't you understand it? Not always. What happens if I opened up this in a code space or forked some code from someone else or cloned a repo? what I can do now is I can now highlight parts of code and get Copilot to actually explain what's going on here. So Copilot, again, if I keep clicking ask, it'll try and explain it in a different way. Kind of like a teacher. It's like, I didn't quite understand it first time. Oh, we'll try again. And it gives you a bunch of different options to actually explain your code. So you can explain it in plain English. Yes, this is a function design, or, to see if the first letter of the character in the sentence is actually an I. If not, then it'll change it. You can actually get it to explain it in more in-depth English, so like slightly longer. And then you can also get it to explain it to you in terms of like the syntax, what parts of the function are being called. And then finally, you can actually get it to give you an example, what would actually happen. Talked about this last night at dinner as well, the idea of actually translating your code. This is still something we're working on, so it's not perfect, but you can actually translate your code into other languages. So if you're a Python developer and you're just wanting to learn something else, like Ruby, PHP, whatever, you can now get it to try and help you translate your code. Now, obviously, it's not perfect. I see a couple of you sniggering there in the corner. It's not perfect. It's not great. We're getting there. But yeah, have a look at that. So somebody asked me the other day, I'm nearly wrapping up, but what happens if I actually don't want Copilot to use the stuff that I've got to learn? What if also does Copilot ever actually give us the same piece of code? Because it's still a relatively new model and what we're still doing, we're still learning, you can actually get Copilot to filter out some of the things that it can tell you. So in most cases, the code that Copilot gives you is specific to you. It's been synthesized just for you. In less than 1% of the cases, however, you might get code that is similar to something that is already in an open source repository. So you can turn off the filter in your Copilot settings on GitHub and say, actually block these suggestions. So if there's a snippet of code that's even 100 characters, I can't remember exactly what it is, but about 100 characters, similar to another piece of code that's on the internet, don't show it to me. And then under that, you also saw there was that option to say, do not use my code for improving GitHub's products. So your code won't be used. If you like Copilot, head over to the Copilot website, copilot.github.com, and try it out. It is free for 60 days for anyone to try. Otherwise, I think it says $120 for the year, something like that. $10 a month, and $100 for a year. So you get 2 months free if you sign up for the whole year. Teachers, I just found out, if you're a teacher, you now get Copilot for free as part of the campus program, the GitHub Global Campus program. So if you're a teacher, you get it for free. And obviously open source developers, you get that for free as well, if you're working on a big open source project. Now finally, I know we're at time, but finally I really want to touch on this point of ownership because it comes up all the time. Regardless of whether it's the articles that we're talking about before, the artwork, here with program, people are like, well, what happens with, AI, like ownership? Who owns the thing? Do I own it because I, built the artwork? Does the program own it because they're the ones who built the AI? Does the OpenAI own it? Most of the time, we've come to the conclusion that nearly all these things, they allow the people who actually create it to have the ownership. And it's exactly the same with Copilot. So the code that you write with Copilot is your code. Nobody else owns it. We don't own it. You own it. So I want to finish on that. Finally, again, there's a gist up there for all the resources, links to everything that I spoke about. If you do have questions, because obviously we don't have time for questions, and I never included time for questions, you can tweet me on all the social media platforms, known to man, or come and chat to us at the booth, because I have a couple pairs of socks to give away. Thank you so much for listening to me, Copilot, in 20 minutes.
Thank you so much.